Hey guys, welcome back. BDCKR here. We're back with our weekly Q&A thing. Going to be a little bit shorter and maybe sound a little bit different this week, just because we've had a technical failure.
Yeah, more than just a technical problem. It's that desktop. We're on a laptop now. That desktop has not been good to us.
Not recently, at least. It's lasted a while now.
The one before that lasted more than 10 years, so
yeah.
I think their standards our expectations have been set maybe a little bit higher.
Mm-hmm. But there's just component failing
happening
regularly enough. Yeah, because there's a catastrophic failure there somewhere, because it won't even turn on properly.
Will not boot. All right, so we'll start. So this episode is going to be a little bit shorter because we're having to spend a lot more time just making it work on this laptop.
Yeah.
And the footage you're watching, though, Suicide Squad Deadshot, first impression, again, I say that it's not so much first impressions, but new sort of re-impressions, like coming back to him after not playing for a while. He's quite good. He's got a 4-hit special 2. It is back-end loaded, but it does overall a high amount of damage. The problem with the special 2 is that the kicks aren't they're a little bit, but not very ranged at all. So if you're not close enough, a lot of them will miss, compared to, say, the special 1, which I think all of the hits are ranged.
Mm-hmm.
So I won't say it's more powerful that way, but it's definitely more interesting. Gives you a bit more flexibility in play. I like him. He really teams up well with the Rebirth Raven and Hawk Girl. Because his special 2 is so good. What I'm running into, I'm trying to figure out, because some of these things you don't know until you've played them for a bit, but I'm trying to figure out if there's a way to make any of his combos, his basic combos, chain, and it looks like it doesn't, as much as I'm trying to do anything. So it's a bit random whether I get the special 2 unblocked, but I mean he's good enough that it doesn't matter entirely. Yeah.
So there we go. Do we want to get right into our first question?
Sure.
So this one comes from Artem Totems, and they say, I'm running into an issue that the cloud icon won't appear to me at all, regardless of whether I'm connected to the internet or not upon entering the game after the data reset. Is there anything I can do to fix it?
Yeah, so that's a basic problem, like a fundamental kind of problem. I shouldn't say basic, because basic's got different connotations.
Yeah, basic makes it seem easy.
Yeah, it's a fundamental problem. So the cloud icon appears because of your Google Play account. So there is a fundamental problem where your Google Play account is not connected properly. Mm-hmm. So I'm not sure what you need to do, but it's at a level that's beyond injustice. It's not just injustice, it is whatever else is happening, because you'll see that same kind of behavior if you can normally get it to work, but you actually don't have a Google Play account, or you're not logged into it. Because if you're logged into it, then it should give you that cloud icon. Mm-hmm. And there are times, actually, one thing I should point out, there are times every once in a while. So in the last few years, we haven't had any updates for content, but we've had a bunch of updates that are essentially bug fixes. Yeah. And there are times where the Google Play software updates, it becomes incompatible with Injustice, and then there's going to be a period of time where things like the challenge reset glitch doesn't work, because it'll give you an error when Injustice is loading, saying something wrong with the Google ID or something. So I can't even remember the message. And then the challenge reset doesn't work for anybody. So it sounds like it's not working for you because you've got a specific problem, and troubleshooting that is sort of beyond our ability without actually being like sitting beside you, watching you log into your device.
Yeah, that's a more sort of hands-on troubleshooting thing.
Yeah.
Okay, and our next one, getting right through them this week, comes from I don't even know how I'm gonna. Let me take a run at this. Mauzix. It's Maozzks. They say, are both of you avid comic book readers?
So I wouldn't have thought that was an interesting question. I used to be.
Yeah.
So there was a time in my life, probably in high school, where I would go every week to a guy's basement, and he ran a comic store.
Out of his basement?
Out of his basement. It was very informal. It was cash only. He did not have a cash register. He did not charge tax. He gave you 20% off. He would give you a free bag and board with every comic. 20% off cover price at the time would have made everything pretty much American cover price.
So he was a guy who just really loved comics, I guess, and just wanted as many people reading as possible.
Yeah.
Because it sounds like he was a collector, kind of,
Well,
if he had the value of the bag and board.
He had a bunch of back issues, but he's got to be a little bit more than that, because in order to get the new issues every week.
Yeah.
I mean, I never asked him at the time, like, it didn't matter to me. I never asked him at the time what his business model was, or how he had like a diamond account to place his wholesale orders and stuff. But
yeah, but that's probably what it was. Is probably that he had access to stuff, operating as a business, right, and ordering in bulk and all of that stuff. That he probably loved comics enough that whatever it gave him, whatever extra sway or ability to buy stuff, maybe it lets him buy special editions, maybe it lets him get like promo stuff like standees, right?
Right.
Like he's operating like a store, like he gets to have all that stuff and he just gets to keep it, right?
Right.
Because it sounds like he was not doing it for a significant amount of money.
Yeah.
With all the discounts, 20% off consistently, free bag and board. It sounded like he was in it for the love of the game.
Well, but I think there was enough profit, and because his overhead would be low.
I guess so.
Like, because he doesn't actually have to run a business.
Yeah.
Like, he's not there. He's not open 5 days a week. He's open basically on Saturday.
Yeah. Interesting.
Maybe the Sunday too.
Well, so I wonder if the finances worked
and
out.
he'd sell at conventions, right? So he'd take a table.
Ah, okay.
So
he'd probably sell for more at conventions.
Yeah, but he had really good taste. So he's the reason why I started reading Alan Moore's Swamp Thing. Why I started reading the first, way back when, the first manga that was available.
Yeah.
Mainstream was probably Lone Wolf and Cub. Quickly followed by the Eclipse titles that were published in conjunction with Viz Comics. So Viz Comics is huge now, right?
Yeah.
They publish a ton of manga. But back then, this was their first foray, so they partnered with Eclipse Comics, which is now defunct. And they did Mai the Psychic Girl, Area 88, and Kamui. Mm-hmm. And what else? Oh, he was the reason I started reading Sandman.
Mm.
And basically all the stuff that was interesting that was maybe not the mainstream, because everybody was collecting, like, the old Marvel stuff, right, like Spider-Man, X-Men and stuff, but he put some...
It was well curated.
Yeah.
You could actually go there for suggestions and recommendations,
for sure,
and find stuff that you couldn't otherwise. So
there
was actually a value above and beyond just cheaper. You were getting a better experience.
He was why I read Miracle Man.
Ah.
So it was already canceled. Like, I think it was already a done thing. Maybe it was around the time, so it must have been, because Eclipse was still publishing, so maybe it was when it was still publishing, because my memory's a little bit foggy, then it's been a while.
Yeah.
But Eclipse clearly failed at some point, which is why Miracle Man was in limbo.
Yeah.
But it couldn't have failed yet, because they were publishing the Japanese comics, now that I think about it. So, yeah, so I used to, but it's been a long time, and the problem I ran into was that it got to be so expensive to read stories. Like, that when each issue... So there's a funny thing that happened to the comic industry. So one of the things that I think helped it was graphic novels.
Yeah.
Having full storylines, limited storylines. It wasn't always that, limited series was some big event. There would be coherent storylines that would end in 4, 6, 12 issues. And you could go put them all in a book, and it would be an easy way to read it. You wouldn't have to unbag and rebag every time you read a comic. By the time it got expensive, like when I started collecting, each comic was maybe 75 cents.
Yeah, they were cheap.
Yeah, so you could actually afford to just try different things.
This is well-trodden ground on the channel.
Has it been? I can't remember now. So then I stopped collecting for a while, because then they got into all the gimmicks, right? Like multiple covers, multiple cards inside poly bags.
Yeah.
It felt like just a big money grab. And I started collecting again maybe in the early 2000s, bought a few comics. And then, again, it got so expensive there, it felt like it was just too much. There wasn't enough to bring me back to want to be buying it regularly. And once I got out of that habit, then I didn't even read graphic novels either, because, I didn't get started on something, so I didn't feel compelled to even try.
Yeah.
So I used to love reading comics, and that has really probably not for at least 10 years.
Yeah, and I don't think I was ever an avid comic book reader. There is definitely, I got a curated selection from you of good stuff at different times, but it was more just, one-off media recommendations. Right? So there's like a lot of, I think...
You read Miracle Man, right?
I've read Miracle Man, I've read Watchmen, I've read some, I think, Ultimate Spider-Man.
Oh, that was good. Ultimate Spider-Man, Brian Michael Bendis.
Yeah, I've read different things piecemeal here and there. Yeah. But I think the vast majority of mediums for art have good stuff in them, right? But there's very few mediums that I would say I'm like especially a fan of. I think if I had to pick one, it would probably be prestige television, which is that kind of, serious, dramedy kind of stuff, right? So that's, your Breaking Bads, your Pluribuses, your Better Call Sauls, your Successions, your Severances, whatever. Stuff that has big ambitions, sort of intermediate runtimes, usually more than half an hour, and like high budget, right? That's the closest thing to, I think, a medium or a format, like a commonly accepted format that I specifically tend to gravitate towards, because there's a lot of good stuff in that domain.
Right.
But outside of that, I don't think there's a huge amount of, there's a bunch of animes that I've watched that I've enjoyed. I say a bunch. I've watched probably less than the average anime watcher, right? But I wouldn't say I'm like an anime fan, right? Like, I don't have any issue with them. It's really just the quality of the stuff, but there's not like the tropes and structure of it is not something that I find sort of intrinsically appealing. I think that's the same with comic books for me, where, there's some really good stories in comics. I don't find I've seen people talk about the craft, and I think, when you get into it, and I think that's part of why becoming a fan of something is so rewarding, is that you get to see the media that something's in conversation with. You get to say, oh, this is sort of a response to the trend. This is, a push and pull of this thing becoming popular, and then somebody deconstructing it, and then somebody reconstructing it. There's a different take on it. You can see, artists. You can see certain authors. And then you can also see sort of craft stuff, right? Like, you can see the way... There's somebody on TikTok. I don't spend a lot of time on TikTok, but I see them every once in a while, and they talk about doing lettering. And their whole account is just lettering in, like, bubbles. And,
is that Todd Klein?
I don't remember.
Oh, okay.
It might be. But it's just, how would you communicate somebody trying to communicate in Morse code, right? How would you turn that into both a readable thing and something else? How would you, communicate, like Transformers Bumblebee style? Somebody trying to communicate by clipping together audio clips from different, like, radio stations or TV channels, right? How do you communicate
How
that
do you
kind
visually
of stuff?
convey the idea that that's happening?
And so there's something really impressive and really cool about the art of it for me. But I think that has very little to do with the fact that it's comic books. I think anybody operating at a high level craft, doing something creative, and talking about how to solve creative issues in really satisfying, legible ways for the audience. Like, I think that's a really cool thing. And so I know that the more you get into stuff and the behind the scenes and the understanding of the craft, the more you can often extract out of it.
Right.
But I don't know. Actually, I lied. I think there is media that I tend to come back to pretty consistently, which is, I guess, YouTube videos. Pretty fairly often. I think I have probably a better understanding of, especially like stuff like video essays, the craft and construction of a video essay. I'm more familiar with the sort of format and stuff like that.
Right.
But I think with anything that I spend any amount of time in, developing taste and developing an understanding of context is kind of cool, right?
See, and as you're saying all that, it makes me sort of examine my relationship with comics, and I think the reason why I've sort of fallen out of my relationship with comic books is because my relationship was based on, it was one of the few things that was really affordable.
Yeah.
And it probably shouldn't matter. I mean, back then, so there was TV then, but TV was a different beast.
Yeah.
Like, you watched it when it was available. If you
there
missed
wasn't
it, it was
infinite
gone.
good TV all the time for a reasonable price if you're willing to pay for streaming, and for free if you're willing to, do stuff that you shouldn't to access it.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that you just, if you didn't get the channels, couldn't watch it. If you weren't around when it was on, you couldn't watch it. Yeah. I mean, there was good TV, but I was at an age where, I don't know if you remember My So-Called Life. Did you ever watch that?
You made me watch some of it.
I made you.
Well, yeah, you did.
Yeah, I know.
I wasn't that intrinsically motivated. And I remember.
Yeah. No. Okay. So
it
doesn't matter. Yeah. No. But it doesn't matter. But that show was one of the first shows where there was not only like a huge amount of fan support to try to save the show, but once it failed, there's a lot of fan support for the project to bring it out on DVDs.
Yeah.
So my recollection is at the time, the only shows that got DVDs were the ones that were already super popular, where there was an established market and they knew that the studios knew that they could sell them. And when it was a show that was canceled because of poor ratings, it was sort of a new thing to have DVDs available for them. And it was a whole story. But I remember being part of that sort of community.
Yeah.
That was involved in trying to get... here's a fun story. So San Diego Comic-Con had a bunch of the stars from Freaks and Geeks. So My So-Called Life the community morphed into just other kinds of TV show support, and there was a part of that was for Freaks and Geeks.
Yeah.
And when Freaks and Geeks got canceled, a bunch of the cast members were doing a panel at San Diego Comic-Con. And I found someone on the board who was willing to take my DVDs of the show and have the cast members sign the case.
That's pretty cool.
So it was.
I remember Martin Starr, right?
Yeah, there's a bunch of them. So the one who played Bill, that's Martin Starr. I think Sam. I think Cindy, the Coach Kachevsky. Like it was neat. Like just I don't know. It was a different world, and I think it shouldn't matter. But part of the appeal sometimes is both the nostalgia, All right, so the nostalgia, the quality, but also the access or lack of access.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think actually one of the things that we're increasingly seeing, or not increasingly seeing necessarily, because I think you've seen it for a while, but that is visible in a way that I think is more obvious to external audiences, people outside of something, which is how big of a deal the community around something is in terms of determining its staying power, right? And I've definitely talked about this before, but it will have been years ago at this point, of the idea of, part of the reason why people buy like a video game when it's new or watch a show right as it's coming out is not because the show is any better while it's fresh, right? But it's because you get to participate in something that feels really alive, that it gets to be a social experience in addition to whatever that media experience is by itself, right? That you get to talk about it with your friends, that you get to see stuff about it online, that you get to feel like you are part of something that is sort of real and vital and alive in a way that is not there if you watch something years later.
Point of fact, injustice. Because the community is much smaller now.
Yeah.
And it's hard to imagine if you weren't there at the time just how vibrant the community was, how much stuff was going on when GameFAQs, Warner Brother forums, and even Reddit, which still exists now, but is sort of a bit of a shadow of its former self, where there was just so many more people playing and interested in talking about the same things that you were thinking, especially when the content was new.
Yeah. And, well, I mean, you think about, like, a huge number of books, too, right? Say what you want about Harry Potter, right? I haven't gone back and looked at the original source text, right? I'm not that motivated to go back and read and support Harry Potter or contribute to the community at all, given sort of how everything's shaken out with J.K. Rowling, right?
Right.
But I think a huge part of what made Harry Potter such a big thing, I think... Whether you think that the books were not very good or okay or pretty good or awesome, they are certainly not unique, and they're certainly not uniquely good in terms of quality for coming-of-age fantasy books, right? There are, no matter how much you like Harry Potter, there are inarguably dozens of coming-of-age fantasy books that are as good or better, right? If you think it's the best thing fantasy has to offer, maybe dozens that are as good, right? And if you're anywhere else on the spectrum, you can probably find something that you would have a hard time saying it's not better. But the community is a big deal. right? The fact that you could, go to the Wizarding World, buy merch, talk about it with friends, right?
Watch the movies.
Fanfic, right?
Yeah.
The idea of how many people were out there just making it an important part of their days, the house quizzes, the personality stuff. There's a huge, I think, enervating value that fandom has that really does add to the quality of stuff.
Yeah.
And I think there's sort of there's many different types of experience like that you can have, but the two ones that I think are big ones, or one is like everybody in the world seems to be loving this thing. It seems to be really popular, and you just feel like you're part of this big sort of movement, culture, whatever.
A discussion.
Yeah. And then the other version of it is you feel like there's this really small kind of tight-knit group of people where you feel like we are there's something meaningfully different about us for at the very least having found this thing and each other. And so we've got this little community of people, and it feels like sort of a shared secret, but it's a shared secret with strangers, which is I think like a really weird, unique, cool space to be in.
Right.
So I don't even remember what we're talking about or what we got about.
If we're both avid comic book readers, and we're not.
Not really, yeah.
Not anymore. Definitely not. I was at one point, and I think the industry has killed my joy of, not joy of reading comics, but my joy of definitely reading comics regularly.
Yeah.
So I can't really say I'm avid. If there's something really good, I will read it. And I find myself, I picked up the brother-in-law of a friend's collection, who was collecting around the same time I was, and I got a lot of joy out of rebagging and boarding a bunch of them and seeing some of the stuff that he collected that I used to collect before I sold off a bunch of it in the late 90s. So if I find the time when I'm retired, I might just have a binge and read through all of it again, but I'm definitely not an avid comic books, because there's just so much happening now that I'm just not reading, but I definitely have very fond memories of comic books, and I was an avid reader and collector at one point. Yeah.
So there we go. One sort of button idea for when we're talking about culture, I think that's the other thing where you can have stuff become for a certain group of people without there being really any reason to. And the example I'm thinking of here is video games, where the culture around it being relatively toxic in certain spaces towards like women and minorities and basically anybody who is like not like either a teenage boy or a dude who is willing to be edgy or who's willing to subject themselves to sort of the community around them of teenage boys, right? Where there's nothing that makes video games, I think, particularly gendered in any significant way. But the community around it has definitely, over its history, served to push out women and certain other groups of people. And so it's given sort of a perception. And when I'm talking about video games, I'm also, I'm using sort of the traditional sort of like online multiplayer thing, or the sort of most common online communities around video games as an example. I know there always have been women in games and spaces for women and stuff like that. And when we talk about the statistics, the idea that, when you count things like mobile games, which absolutely should count, right? Yeah. The like most common profile of a gamer, I think, is like a middle-aged woman, right? And it's because there's a lot of stuff that doesn't traditionally get, it's not culturally considered to be somebody who's a gamer, but playing Candy Crush, it's a video game, right?
It is.
If you play Candy Crush and you care about Candy Crush and you like Candy Crush, that makes you a gamer, right?
Yeah.
Anyways, do we want to do one more
I think
quick,
we
or do you
need
think
to,
we're out of time?
I think we're out of time. I think we got to cut it short this week to try to do a bit of troubleshooting on the computer.
Yes,
and figure out actually the workflow on the laptop, which is going to probably take twice as long as on the desktop where everything's set up.
Unfortunate. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we'll leave you there for this week. To finish up, we'd like to give a huge thank you to our lovely patrons on Patreon.
And that would be Michael Devries, Irvin, Ruiz, Hoshi127, Nora Klimek, and Miguel, who are supporting us on the credited level.
So there we go. Thank you so much for your support, and thanks so much to all of you for watching or listening. We'll see you next time.
Komoda.